Wait. Don't skip this advertisement. Go to the website, eatlunchandboardgame.com. Scroll to just below the subscribe to the email list. There's a link to take the survey. This is the 2024 listener survey. Please fill it out. Let me know how we're doing. Let us know what you want us to play, who you want us to interview. Everybody who fills out the survey will be entered to win a t shirt, either the board gamer in training or the board game trainer of your color, your size, shipped to you for free. This offer will end when we post the first new episode in 2025. Again, that's take the listener survey at eatlunchandboardgame.com. Now, on with the episode. All right, welcome back to Eat Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins. And joining me today is Professor Camllia Zamboni, the editor and author of Roll for Learning, 51 micro tabletop role-playing games to use in the classroom. Should I refer to you as Professor, or is Camllia okay?
Camllia is totally fine.
So I actually came across your book on Facebook, as you know, Facebook ads target me for anything board game related, and or no, you know what? It was you posted on one of the board game Facebook pages that I follow, and I was like, well, I know I'm going to buy that book real quick, so went ahead, picked it up. We'll make sure you put a note to that in the show notes. But so, what is your book all about?
All righty. So first of all, thank you for having me here. And I want to mention that I am the editor of this book with two wonderful colleagues, Matthew Farber and William Merchant, and they are both at the University of Northern Colorado. And I work at Wesleyan University. So just wanted to give them a shout out because this was really a collaborative work that we did. Matthew Farber was actually the one launching the idea. And then he asked me, because most of my research and everything that I work on is in tabletop role-playing games. So this was the medium that we wanted to work on. And then Will came on board and he helped a lot with systematizing all of the entries and so on. So first of all, just wanted to recognize my co-authors and co-editors. So we decided to write this game after we saw that there was a lot of literature on what games are and how they can be used, and especially tabletop role-playing games have been analyzed from lots of different points of view: media studies, sociology, and also learning, of course, psychology, and all of that, even therapy. However, there wasn't really a book that you could play, and so that was our initial nugget of an idea. What if we actually ask a lot of academics, but also game designers, and ideally both, to come together and send us a micro tabletop role-playing game. Why micro? Because we saw that there were a lot of jams, especially the micro TTRPG jam, very popular on itch.io, this platform where a lot of indie games, especially tabletop role-playing games, are published. And we saw that within that medium, so a very tiny tabletop role-playing game, just a few pages, people were experimenting with form, they were experimenting with genre, and we said, this is really cool. How about we tap this creative energy and bring it into a book that has the same format, but also has a learning goal attached to each game, so that instructors can download the game and potentially use it in the classroom, because it has scaffolding, it has materials that allow you to use the game directly in the classroom. It has advice, tips, bibliography. It tells you what it's trying to do from a learning point of view. So we came up with this format where we had game chapters. So there is a game in it, but there's also information on how to categorize it. It has a target audience. It is designed to be used directly in a classroom. And then it has ideas on tips for implementation. And then it has best practices for playing, so using safety tools, but also how to adapt this game into the classroom space. And then it has tips for running the game, but also ideas on assessment, right? As instructors, when we see a game, we're like, okay, how do I grade that? There's ideas for that. There's the learning outcomes explained. So if you have to convince your colleague or the administration in a school that it's good to use this game, you can use that part. And then there's bibliography if you want to expand, right? So that was the
Yeah.
idea. And then we got a bunch of games. We were not going for volume, we wanted quality. So we received the games. Most of them were good to go. So we selected the ones that could be placed in categories. And then we created the list. I actually also have a game in here, and it's a game for language learning that I created with a colleague, Alessia Caviglia. And so every author is free to keep the rights to their games. So a lot of authors have already, also published the games under itch.io and so on. And the PDF is free. So for us, we had these priorities, like how can we make a book of games that is practical and can be used. We created an introduction to explain why we think these games can be excellent for learning environments. And then our other priority was that it could be available for free in the PDF form, at least.
Yeah. Well, I downloaded the PDF because it was free. And then as I was thumbing through it, I was like, nah, I'm just going to buy it. So I did, showed up a couple of days later. So not too bad. But it is interesting. Not only did you break it down into social, emotional learning, STEM, and humanities, you also broke it down by age, which is also interesting because I have a 5-year-old, or sorry, she'd be so mad at me. She's 6. I have a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old, and so they are completely different. And what works for one doesn't always work for the other, and vice versa. And so it's interesting that you broke it down to 3 different levels. I think 5 to 11, 11 to 15, and 15 and beyond.
Yeah, let me tell you about that. That was the hardest part of the book. So we asked authors. We gave everybody sort of a template. And so in the beginning of each game, you see this sort of template. Mm-hmm. It is like a first page with the title, the author, and then it is what system are you using, and then brief description, and then content areas. And that's what we use to select the games and place them in one place or the other, in one category or the other. Then we ask for target audience, and that's really what we use to categorize. So we let the authors sort of self-select. And so is your game good for any age? Does it have a focus? Like for my language game, we say that it is for like later parts of high school and higher ed. And so 14 and over in terms of age, because we know that some of the themes that are discussed require some maturity. And so we let the author self-select first. Then once we got all of the games, which is 51, we were like, okay, let's find age brackets and not grades, because our audience is international. And I was born and raised in Italy. We don't understand what grades are. So grades is very American as an idea. And so we're like, let's do age groups. And the age groups, as you see, don't necessarily perfectly correspond to grades in school, because we looked at what the games were, and then we found age brackets that were significant. So that had a lot of games that were condensed in that. And then we sort of tried to have a balance of games. And then we sent it out to the authors. And a few authors came back to us and said, I don't think my game belongs in the 11 to 15. It should be 15 and beyond. So we accounted for the authors and their own preference, and we redid the categories. So, some are heavier than others, but we feel that there's something for everyone, and you'll never make everybody happy. That's a very important truth to understand with editing a book of this size.
with anything in life, I can tell you that.
Also true, yeah.
Well, as a game designer myself, we put, when my business partner and I put games out, you always get people like, this game's dumb. Well, then you don't have to buy it. You don't have to play it.
That is exactly I'm like, with this project, we wanted to bring it to as many instructors as possible. We wanted to bring people who knew what they were doing, both in terms of game design and of learning goals. We wanted to give our own input in selecting the ones that we thought worked well. we gave it sort of like coherent form. We created an introduction that can help some people justify why they're using games in the classroom, because we still have to justify them. When we talk about school administrations, we're still behind in terms of what you can do in the classroom. And with all of those tools, we're like, if you're still not convinced, well, you can still download it because it costs nothing, but you can also just not worry about it. Like, keep doing what you're doing. But this is just one additional resource that can be added to the arsenal of teachers who need arsenals for, making their classrooms more interactive. And 1 second, I need to cough. Apologies. Yeah, more interactive and engaging for the students, and games do that really well.
Yeah, it's interesting because what kind of drew me to that is a lot of these are meant to be played in 60 minutes. A vast majority of these can be played in an hour. And I love to play games at lunch, and that's about an hour or less. So that really kind of drew me to this even more, because, I feel that playing games at lunch with coworkers really helps bring everybody together. It kind of gives you some fun, some non-work for an hour, just sit down and enjoy yourself for an hour and don't think about work. And so I was interested in that. And so a good friend of mine is also a teacher. And so I told him he should check this book out. So I think he downloaded the PDF. But it's such a good idea to just compile them all together. So, but I will warn anybody who gets the book. There's a lot of bibliography. So you're going to go down a lot of rabbit holes, a lot of websites.
That's our hope. Yes. Lots of rabbit holes, and some games have also bibliography and ludography. So they tell you about checking out other games as well. About what you said, two things come to mind. The first is that, as you say, we don't necessarily just want these games to be for the classroom. Very often what we hear in educational games, I teach an educational game design class at Wesleyan University. And what we see a lot with educational game, which is like, well, since they have a learning goal, it's okay if they're not particularly good games. And we're like, no, they need to be well designed. They need to be games that work and that are engaging also in the way they are built. And that's why we wanted this mix of people who had an interest in a specific learning goal, but also had experience designing games. And thankfully, that's what we got. So I'm very happy with that. The other thing about the 60 minutes, yes, especially tabletop role-playing games tend to run for a long time. That's my favorite type of game. It's easily 4 hours. At conventions, you have 2 hours, but 1 hour is really hard. So this was really good. And a few of the games, including mine, are designed with the intent of being used in the class. So, for example, some of them are modular. And so the idea is you don't have 60 minutes in a class. You can do maybe 20 minutes, and then the game can be paused there. You pick it up in the next class. So it's not just the idea of playing with how short can we make this so that it fits in a class, but also how can we make it so that it can be broken down in different sessions. Sure.
I mean, we did a whole D&D campaign over lunch hours. Took us about 2 years, but we got through it. It took some time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you maybe brought up a good point. How did you get into gaming?
Okay. Wow. It's a long history. So I'm originally from Italy. I started, I used to play board games with the family, not the best. I think the only one that I actually liked at the time was Labyrinth, which, big hit in Europe. But then when I was around 17, I started getting into role-playing games with friends. My first game was Vampires, second edition, I think. And then I switched to D&D. I started with 3.5, then I went to 5th, and then I went back to 1st for a while. And then I decided that perhaps it was not my favorite type of game. And so I started really getting into indie role-playing game, which is most of what I play now. I also design and translate tabletop role-playing games and edit. So I've embraced all sides of of the medium. For board games, I have started. I mean, as soon as I moved to the U.S., I was able to find groups. I was first in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, for 2 years. Then I was in Los Angeles for 5 years, and now I've been in Connecticut for 10 years. And I've always been able to find groups to play with. And so I am lucky that I have a lot of friends. And I thought one of your questions was like, are you a Kickstarter backer? Yes, I'm a super backer. So I get a lot of my games from all crowdfunding initiatives or itch.io. I also go every year to a playtesting conference called Metatopia in New Jersey, so that we playtest a lot of new games. So I feel that my getting into games started in a way that is more commercial and what you get on the outside, and then little by little getting my way in. In the meantime, I was studying to specialize, especially in language pedagogy, so second language and foreign language pedagogy. And when I came to Wesleyan, initially I started in the Department of Romance Languages, but then they started the College of Education Studies. And so I asked if I could be involved. They said yes. And I asked if I could be involved talking about playful pedagogy and using games in education, initially just for language learning, and then a little bit more broadly. And then I started teaching the course, and that's really how I started working also from the research side on how game design can interact with learning.
It's awesome.
I was lucky. I was very lucky that my university supported it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to kind of jump around a bit. So one of the contributors to the book is Maureen Quigley, who's a professor at the University of Missouri St. Louis, which happens to be where I work. And I happen to know Maureen strictly because working at the university, I can take classes for, some reduced rate or whatever. So I was like thumbing through the old catalog, and she taught a board game art class or something. So I reached out to her. Now we have lunch every month, and working with her and some other people in the art department. And so to see her name in your book, I was like, small world, and it was interesting. But so back to Metatopia. I've never heard of Metatopia. I'll have to look into it. I have family that lives in New Jersey.
Okay.
But
it is. Go ahead.
Oh, well, so here in the Midwest, we have a lot of proto spiels where it's a bunch of playtesting games. And so I go to the Chicago, I go to the St. Louis, which is, down the street. But then next year, Kansas City has one. So I'm excited for that. I was going to go to the Madison, Wisconsin one, but it happened to fall over a weekend. I couldn't go. So I was like, man. But there's a lot like right here within about within a solid 8-hour drive, I could hit about 6 or 8 different ones, and they are a blast. So I really want to look into Metatopia just because I love it. I love going and playtesting these games in various stages of development. Some are very raw. It's like, I don't think you have a game here yet. And some of them, it's like, how do I sign this game to my company? This game's ready to go. And then you have everything in the middle.
Yes. So Metatopia is in Morristown, New Jersey. And it's every November. Then this is double exposure. They have a bunch of events, all for indie gaming. But this one is like the playtesting conference. It's more for board games and tabletop role-playing games and LARP. So everything tabletop. And I forgot to say in the beginning, I only work with tabletop games. I appreciate video games. I do not have time to play both. So I've made my peace with the fact that I am a tabletop game person. That is okay.
No, I am also in that boat. I don't play a lot of video games. I didn't growing up, and I just kind of never caught back up to it, I guess. I don't know. It was never a big thing for me. So my kids like to play. We have a Wii, to tell you how far, how many systems back that they think is great. But, I do prefer tabletop games. Role-playing games is something newer for me. So it's interesting, but I am getting more into role playing games. Found some pretty hilarious ones out there. We just wrapped up one at work. We played Cat by John Wick.
Mm-hmm.
What a riot! You're running around as a
Mm-hmm.
cat.
Mm-hmm. If you want another quick one in which you play raucous animals, try Honey Heist by Grant Howitt. Grant Howitt is a British game designer, and they became like right now they're part of Rowan Rook and Deckard, who put out great games like Heart, Spire, Royal Blood, and others. But Grant Howitt specifically became famous with one-page games, and Honey Heist is the most famous, in which you play a bear who has to do a heist to steal honey from the local fair.
It's funny. While I was waiting, I need to jump on. I actually am on the Rowan Rook and Deckard website because of your book, and it talks about the one page RPGs. So it's funny. I actually have that tab up behind it here. So yeah, and then one of the other ones that we haven't had. I'm going to try to get it together for my kids this Christmas season is The Secret Life of Gingerbread Men.
Mm-hmm.
So I got it somewhere. I mean, this is the first time I've actually like been in my office in a long time because we've been building on the other side of the attic / office. So I'm like, somewhere in one of these stacks is that the little pamphlet for that. So when you back Kickstarters, do you mainly focus on the RPG world, or do you get some tabletop games while you're in there?
No, I back everything that piques my interest. So I will say that I just got this behind me, but fromage, and that's a game about literally making cheese, which is
Cheese.
awesome.
Yeah.
Brings my passions in life are wine, cheese, and games, so it's perfect.
And we could be best friends.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very European kind of background. But so I back a lot of board games. I back a lot of tabletop role playing games. I try to back things that I have a sense might not go into retail because I want to. I try to focus on indie producers when if for example Free League, who was this indie producer, now they're very quite mainstream at this point, who then they make very famous tabletop role playing games like Alien, Basin, Mutant Year Zero, the latest Blade Runner game. They're getting a lot into IPs. So right now I know all of those games will go into retail. So, if I really want to have it earlier, I'll back it. But otherwise, I try to focus on smaller producers. And if you want, every February on Kickstarter, there is the Zine Quest, it's called. And this is all zines. And I adore zines. They're terrible to store because you can never put it anywhere. I ended up buying like stands like stands for like brochures during fairs, and I use those to showcase the zine so I don't forget I have them. So not the best, but at the same time, that's where I see a lot of that innovation and thinking about mechanics and not necessarily wanting to sell, but wanting to try something new. And that's sort of what we wanted to bring with the book as well. And I feel that it worked in that sense that people are like, yeah, let's experiment. And the good thing about this book, another thing we really wanted is that it is not just peer edited, but it's play tested. Every author was asked to peer review and play test 2 other games. And we did the same. Of course, we also looked at all of them. And so I feel that it is in a way professionalizing a little bit this collection of games so that they can go even on curriculum, right? If you're a professor and need a publication, this actually counts as a publication because it's peer reviewed. And that's nice. And it's also sort of a quality control because if somebody play tests your game, they'll let you know if it works or not.
Yeah. Or what needs a little bit more work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody got feedback.
Yeah, that's where all that the fun, the Metatopia and the proto spiels and stuff like that were kind of help you sand off those rough edges a little bit. Like the last game that that my company just put out, which we've got on order right now. So come on, China, let's get it going. When we signed it, the designer, it was like 95% there, but man, it was just a little rough around the edges. And I took it to a couple proto spiels. We tried a couple things. This worked, that didn't. Whoa, that definitely didn't. But you get to the point where, okay, and we kind of, like I said, we just kind of sanded off those rough edges and smoothed it out, and the game worked out pretty well now. So we're really happy with it and can't wait to get it to our backers. Hopefully, we'll say December, but probably more like January, depending on the traffic and the ports.
Yeah. That's great. First of all, I'm glad that worked out well. For me, it's very important. The playtesting was very important. I wish we could have done more of that, but it was untenable with this many games.
Sure.
But the idea, creating a game is an iterative process, and so you would have to playtest it and have. I feel that having authors also playtest each other's game also made them a little bit more aware. This is what's going into the volume.
That's something I didn't think of. Yeah. They have a better idea of what everybody else is doing, or so you know where the bar is set, and how do you compare to that bar?
Yeah, and we asked everybody who was playtesting games, do you think this is viable? Do you think this actually works, or is this game broken? But because if the game is broken, we have to go back to the author and ask them to fix some things before we publish it, because otherwise you can't play it. And of course, it's never going to be perfect, as we said before, right? We can't make everybody happy, but at least having 2 or 3 people sending feedback, you can see if they agree on, hey, there's something that is not working. Maybe that's worth going back and looking at it. See.
So, Camilla, how do you pronounce Klaus Teuber's classic, The Settlers of
Catan?
Catan. Okay, good. Well, I figured being Italian, you would have that accent, have it right. But yeah, that's what kind of really started my love of board gaming for sure.
Oh, well, it's a good one.
Solid.
Yeah,
that one I might actually say is one that can please everybody. And if you don't like Catan, I don't need to talk to you anymore. So,
I mean, it can there are things that further games down the road implemented that I think could make even Catan a better game. But it's definitely what got the attention of a lot of people looking at, hey, we can make very interesting things with this game. And on this note, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Marco Arnaudo, who's a professor at Indiana University. He has 2 books out, but the latest one is fantastic. It's called The Tabletop Revolution. And it tracks, and Marco really has an encyclopedic knowledge about games. He also has a podcast, an online YouTube channel called Marco Omnigamer, where he reviews a bunch of games. But he traces all of the trends and changes that have happened in tabletop games in the last 20 years. And his thesis, which I agree with, is that games have changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and they've changed more in the last 20 years than in the previous 2,000 years. And he talks about implementation of, for example, the development of collaborative games, which were not really a thing before, before the early 2000s. And then
and now they're everywhere.
And I love them. I love collaboration.
Have you played Sky Team?
Yes, excellent game. I'm very glad that he got recognized at the Essen.
Spiel des Jahres, I think, for this year. But oh my gosh, I just got it over the weekend, and my son and I are pulling our hair out trying to land this airplane.
Great.
No, I need to land the airplane. And it's
my only trouble with that is only 2 players, and I wish it would more. But there is another game that also got a nod at Essen, Dorfromantik.
Yep,
gorgeous game.
Yep.
And that's a collaborative game too. Tile placing game with hexagons, and you have to it's so clever.
And it just got a reskin or a re-release or something. Yeah, but it is interesting to say over the last 20 years. How much gaming has changed, but my goodness, Catan is about to be 30 years old next year. That's crazy.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my favorite games of all time is Acquire, and it turned 60. That game is 60 years old. I'm like, wow. And it is an amazing game that it's Sid Saxon was amazing, way ahead of his time. So
hmm I have to say there are some games that are either older or marketed as like party games, right? So, in a way simpler with less complexity, but I love them. And honestly, they are the most hackable kind of games. And when I teach, my educational game design class, what ends up happening is that a lot of students who don't have a lot of experience designing pick those games as engines to then build their own games. And I'm all for like having a variety of games. There are some that are complex and beautiful with great materials, but I also really like the simple, quick ones that you can play in a second and then you can build on by hacking them.
yeah. So if I did make it out to Connecticut, not Kentucky, got to go a little bit farther, out to
Mhm.
Connecticut, what game are you currently playing? What game's on your table right now?
So I play a lot of games, but right now on the table, I would say that I have tabletop role playing games. I just got a couple. I got Stew Pot, which is very lovely, and it's you play adventure. It's a series of mini games, which is a trend now. That you have a larger frame, and then you have mini games that you play, and this is your adventures like in a D&D type, and you're
Hmm.
stopping at a tavern, and you have a series of mini games that you do to clean or to go grocery shopping, and it's very cute. So I love that. I'm also like in class we played In This Word, which is the last game by Ben Robbins. Ben Robbins does a lot of GM-less collaborative games like
Oh,
Microscope
interesting.
and Kingdom are his most famous. But In This Word is very clever because it can be played in as little as 30 minutes, which is incredible for a role playing game.
Awesome.
But the idea is that you pick a topic, like we picked trash once, and then you create sentences that are true in your word about trash, like trash smells, trash collectors are not paid much, stuff like that. Like different cities recycle in different ways. And then in turns, everybody picks one of these sentences and changes it. For example, trash collectors are the overlord. And then based on that small change, everybody has to add to it and you create a new word based on that sentence. And everybody's like, okay, so perhaps in this word, trash is very expensive and it must be bought. So you then keep going and you have to look at the sentences that you put in initially and say what is still true in this new word or what changes, right? And I use it in class because it's very quick, it's very clever. Some students complain, oh, this is not really a game, it's just an exercise of the imagination. And I was like, well,
That's actually a
sure,
game. I don't.
yeah. And so then I also use it in my language classes actually, because you can use it to make hypotheses, using the conditional form. And so that's one that is always around on my table because I hack it a lot. In terms of board games, so I actually have one that is not new. Well, not romantic, of course. I have a wonderful collaborative game. It's called Almost Innocent, and it's a guessing collaborative game. And the idea, it plays with a grid in front of you, and all of you were in a tavern the previous night. It's fantasy themed, and you don't remember anything, but you wake up in jail, and all of you has been accused of a murder, and you all have a list of details that would create an alibi for the person to your right, I think. And so everybody has to ask questions to the table to try and figure out who who killed who with what weapon. It's like sort of a take on Clue, but it's all collaborative and you pass it around the table. Check it out. It's very
Oh
clever.
man.
Yeah.
Oh, I
um
love Clue and all those other kind of. I went on a huge mystery kick for a while where I was playing a
oh,
lot of old mystery games because
then you're gonna love it.
yeah, don't worry, I've already put it on my list to add to my shelf of shame. But I,
What are you playing?
went. What am I playing? A lot of Sky
Mm.
Team right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Obsession because I just got the latest expansion for Obsession. What else are we playing? We've been playing a lot of. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Why am I drawing a blank on what games I'm playing? That seems weird to me. Well, we did play. I've been playing a lot over Zoom at lunch with my coworker or my friend
Hmm.
who's a teacher. So we've been playing a lot of roll and writes, a lot of quicks, a lot of Quinto.
I was about to say my other game is a roll and write, and it's railroading.
I have not gotten that one yet.
Oh, it's good. Because it's clever, because yes, it's a roll and write, but you also are given just an empty grid, and then you roll and write for like to create rail, if you get the blue edition, the railways and streets, and you are the one who like writes it down, and you have to create patterns that according to where you place your roads and railways, they can give you different points. And you can go for 7,000 different strategies. And I love that because it's so portable and so quick that I play it at lunch. Like literally while I wait for my food, I take it out and it goes from 1 to 6 players. So it's very versatile for player count. And I like that.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. It's been on my
Yes.
list. Yeah, I like that one. I've been playing a lot of Alhambra. I don't know why. That one just kind of,
Hmm.
it's one of those ones that as soon as I play it one time, I remember how much I love it, and I just keep playing it. So I've
Yeah.
been
It's
on Board Game
beautiful
Arena a
too.
lot. Oh yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah. I wish Board Game Arena would get some of the expansions for that game in there because Alhambra has
Mm-hmm.
got some really simple expansions that just kind of make it
Mm-hmm.
just a little crazier. Ooh,
Yeah.
and Colt Express. I've been playing a lot of Colt
Ooh.
Express
I'll
because
write it
that's
down. I haven't tried
that.
it.
Oh, that just celebrated its 10th anniversary. They just put out a little 10th anniversary pack. So a couple new characters. It's a programming game, which is so fun to play with my son, and because there's cards face up and cards face down. So
Mm-hmm.
best laid plans. What do I think Camilla did? Did she go up or did she move
Mm.
trains? And so I'm trying to figure out what do I think you did to bend. So what should I do in reaction to that? And so you build this program of the stack of cards, and then when it's all done, you flip it over, and then you run the program, and all the characters move around and shoot each other. And oh, it's a riot because, like I said, those hidden cards, those hidden movements, when you don't know what they did, can really
Mm-hmm.
just throw your whole program off. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
so that's a good one.
Nice, nice. I'll tell you, I don't know if it's um, like how many people know about it, but there's a game that I would love to play more and I never get to play, which is Septima. Septima is a game about witches and witch trials, and it's so good, but it is so um, complex. It literally takes up a 3 feet table is not enough. Like you need so much area to play it, and it has so many elements. The gameplay is so streamlined. You have a hand of cards, and you choose just one action that you do for each turn, so very quick. But the staggering amount of options that you have every time actually makes it not as quick as you want. And so it ends up, every time I play it, it ends up taking 5 hours, and between the rules explanation and the setup, and then the analysis
Yeah,
paralysis of some decisions. And so I just wish I had more time in my life to play it more. But when you
yeah.
have.
Well, it's one of those ones where you have to teach more people so you can play.
Hmm.
It's the same problem that my son and I have with the game Jet Set by
Hmm.
Waltzel Pogue, is that it's not enough people know about it, and then we teach them, but we always have to play the base game a couple times for them to get the hang of it. Well, we've played the game darn near 20 times, and we're like wanting to expand out and play with all the other expansions, the
Hmm.
different planes and everything. But you got to you got to teach more people. So we've been on like a mission this year to like teach more people this game so that we can play it more. So,
Yeah.
as a teacher, you said, you play games waiting on your food to heat up, but do you play with other coworkers and that kind of thing?
So it depends. That's a good question. So I have different gaming groups according to the game and the time that we have. So at Wesleyan, we're lucky that staff and faculty they have a lunch group like you. I feel that that's very common for coworkers because that's the time that you can probably the only time that people are reliably free. I know that there's a person now, a colleague, trying to get together a group over the winter break. The problem is that like I always go to Italy during breaks because my family is there. So I go and visit them. In terms of other kind of play, so I play with my students. Like we have gaming nights. We are currently in the process of creating a game design club. There is also a board game club at Wesleyan, and I'm the advisor. So we have moments also to play with students, which is really lovely. A lot of our students, of course, are gamers, so they enjoy that. Um, I play online a lot, especially for tabletop role playing games, which take some time. So I play with Italy a lot. I have a lot of good friends in Italy, so we play when it's evening there and afternoon here. So it's an interesting difference, like when it's 9 p.m. there and 3 p.m. for me. So I can arrange my work schedule so that maybe once or twice a week I can play at 3, and then pick up work later, maybe at 6 when we finish, and which is midnight for them. And so I love that because there's a very good, lively tabletop role playing game scene in Italy right now. A lot of Italian games are winning, for example, Ennies at Gen Con, but also there is a good culture of playing and trying a lot of different games. So I feel it by playing with like a lot of friends. Sometimes I run the game, sometimes they run the game. So it's a good way to try a lot of different games. Then, of course, when I go to conventions, I have, 4 or 5 sessions in a day because you play with a bunch of different people and you set them up. But I'll tell you this, with the Italians, they're so crazy. For New Year's Eve, we have this group of friends who gets together. We go in the Alps. We rent a big place, and then it's a self organized convention. So everybody, we have an organizer online. Everybody proposes either board games or LARP or tabletop role playing games, and then people sign up. And then you also bring extra games in case, and it's literally 4 days. Well, nobody has children. Let's put that forward. But so like it's like 4 or 5 days out in the mountains, eating together and playing the all day long. So that's those are fun moments that you can do only during the holidays, of course.
Yeah, my cousins and I, we get together once a year. We go lock ourselves in a weekend in a cabin, and we play. We all bring games. We try to fit as many games in as we can, and then we keep track of who was first and second and all that. So at the end, we have a traveling trophy that whoever wins the most gets the family traveling trophy. So it's always fun.
That.
Yeah, it's always fun. So when you play a game, what color do you tend to want to play as?
All right. I used to be a goth, and still today, the only color that I reliably wear when I work and when I go out is black. And even in games, if I am given the opportunity, I will select black. It tends to be popular, so I don't always get it.
I mean, you got to try, right?
Yeah, I feel that to me, it's just an easy color for me, like both when I wear it or when I play. It's reliable. It stands out on everything goes with it. Like it's to me it's very classic, and it feels very comfortable. What is your color?
I like to go as red.
Oh,
But
that's
my
an
daughter likes
interesting
it.
choice.
My daughter plays as red now, so I try. I'm usually now black as my secondary color. So, but yeah, I was like, she's like, I won't be red. My son's like, Dad's red, and I'm like, it's okay. She can be red. I'll be black. So
I've the color that I've met the least people that are attached to it is yellow. Yellow is never, in my experience, a color that people fight over.
There was a joke that said, if you picked yellow, you picked last. So it's funny that you say that, because if you picked yellow, you picked last. It's like if you're playing Monopoly and you pick the shoe, you probably picked last.
Monopoly is a very bad game.
oh man.
Yeah.
It is. It's coming up on 100 years, though. 90-something years old now. So
if you go, since it's not super close, but it's closer than Connecticut to you, in Rochester at the Museum of Play, which is a wonderful resource.
Yep.
They have some of the earliest copies. And, Monopoly, they also ran, I think, a story in the New York Times recently. Monopoly was created by a woman, and it was originally an anti-capitalist game. Mm-hmm. I think it was called Landowner's Game.
Landlord's
or something like
Game,
that.
Yeah.
Landlord's Game, yeah. And then Lizzie it is amazing. Is it McGee? Great. Oh, you're so
Mhm.
good. But so it is incredible how that was twisted.
Oh yeah, there's a good book called The Monopolist
Hmm.
about it, and it's one of my favorite books. I've read it at least twice, if not three times. It's a good book. I like it. The story of Monopoly is very very interesting for sure.
Yes.
Very sordid history. Not the
I
nicest.
agree. Yeah, it
Yeah,
sort of it mirrors a little bit like what um starting with the best intentions and then getting enveloped into, a company buying it out, and then their ethics do not necessarily relate to yours, and
yeah.
then
I
it
mean,
all snowballs.
even how Monopoly became Monopoly and the different parts of the country, and it all kind of came back together, and the typo in Marvin Gardens, and then you had finance, and you had all these other spin-offs that Monopoly and Parker Brothers had to go out and buy to get all of it under one roof, and then you had anti-monopoly, and yeah, it's a mess. But that book's really good. I highly recommend
Hmm.
The Monopolist. Um,
Yeah, I'll get it. Thank you.
oh yeah, very good book. So what about a 60-minute game? If you're gonna play for a full lunch hour, what game are you gonna take off the shelf?
So I feel that this is a lot of games because there's so many that are 60 minutes. It depends on how I feel. I'd say definitely not a role playing game. That's really hard to fit it
Sure.
in 60. And by the time you have created characters and explained the rules, maybe a very quick honey heist could fit in the 6 minute game. But so I would probably stay away from those. I'll play a board game or a card game in that span of time. Um, I recently tend to gravitate a lot toward cozy and lovely games. So I'll give you a few options. I like Wingspan a lot. It's a clever game. It's elegant. It's a beautiful theme, but also all the tile laying games, starting from Azul to Cascadia. I like it a lot because it also has a
Ooh.
little bit of an environmental theme. But also things like Calico. Calico is the
Mm-hmm.
same creators of Cascadia, and you create quilts and you attract cats. I really like games where you're like sort of beating yourself, like as in playing against your own board. And yes, you are competing with others, but the competition enters in a way that is very lovely. Um, I would stay away probably from complex games because I think like 60 minutes is because we never really consider like rules explanation and questions and the potential, of
Yeah.
then having a little discussion at the end because you want to leave some time for debriefing the game, right? How did it feel? How did it work? And so
Yeah.
it's a 45-minute playing time. And so I feel that these kind of games are also not the worst if you don't finish for whatever reason. And then a bunch of collaborative games that I think could also work well.
Oh yeah. I mean, what group of coworkers doesn't like to sit down and work together to play Pandemic or Castle Panic? Those are two of
Hmm.
my favorite ones where you're working together. Like we got so into Pandemic um at my last job that I had all the expansions, and so we were doing State of Emergency, and we had,
Wow.
I mean, all of them in the lab, and then we had the dice
Oh,
game and all crazy stuff.
I'm not sure you can play it in an hour, especially not first time. But have you tried Daybreak? Because I loved it.
I have not. I've seen that one. It's got that
It's
really
from
pretty cover.
So it's the same creators of Pandemic. It's Leavitt and Matteo Menapace. And since they got it so right with Pandemic, they decided to make a new game. And the new game is also a collaborative game. It's very interesting, and it's about solving climate change. Tall order for a
Oh,
game, but it's produced using no plastic, which is an interesting choice because some of the materials, of course, feel less polished, but it's a good ethical choice. And then it's completely asymmetric. So everybody plays in a different way. So you play as the United States, Europe, China, and the rest of the world. Even the player types are very, like, in a way, they give a strong message, political message too. And then everybody starts with different cards and with different resources, and you have to work collaboratively to make the emissions lower than what the environment can absorb. And you have, like pandemic, you have rounds in which the temperature rises, and so if you go over a certain amount, then you start having
Interesting.
catastrophes. So it's very much the same structure of pandemic, but there is more freedom on what you do on your turns. You literally can create combo of cards to like decrease emissions or create more green energy and stuff like that. It is such a elegant game from like a game design point of view. Um, but of course, it's a little how do you say? If you lose, it feels really depressing because it's kind of what's going on in the world. Yeah.
I failed the world.
Mhm. Um,
Uh,
I'll give you a cute anecdote. We had a science fiction writer visiting Wesleyan, Ada Palmer, wonderful author. She publishes with Tor Books. And she specifically asked if she could gift a game to the board game club at Wesleyan. And she gifted them Daybreak because she writes hope punk kind of sci-fi fiction, which means, the future is not a dystopia or a utopia. The future, the world is still there. We're still working. It's not too bad, but we still have work to do. It's a complex future. And she felt that Daybreak really caught that in a game.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. I'll have to, yeah, one of my good friends, he and his wife love Pandemic, so I'll have to tell him he should check out Daybreak.
Please do.
Yeah, and then because see if I tell him to check it out, then he'll buy it. Then I can play his copy.
Yes, always good with good friends who are in driving distance to share the duty of buying different games.
I
Yes.
wish some of my friends, I'm gonna play just that sound clip for them so they
Yes.
understand that it doesn't always have to be me buying the games.
Indeed. It's very true. It's very true. Yes. Yeah.
No, Daybreak sounds great. Sounds right up the alley of the
Oh,
games that we like to play.
another one that I absolutely adore, but it's too long. You never make it in 60 minutes is Spirit Island.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a solid game, but that's at least 90 minutes, if not 2 hours.
Yes.
But it's a good one.
Sadly,
Actually, the
yes.
the guy that I'm going to tell about Daybreak, he has Spirit Island. So
I have all of the expansions. I love them. But, if every time you play a different spirit, you have to relearn the game every time. So
oh.
it's never 60 minutes, never, in my experience.
So how do you feel about expansions in general? You for them, against them?
It depends. I feel that some
I know
expansions.
it's a loaded question. I get it.
Mhm. So I feel that it depends on the base game and how the expansions interact with it. Like there are expansions, quote unquote, that really are different games that you can combine with it, like Railroad Inc. It has different colors. They all are standalone games, but then you can combine them to add to like have a larger play account. I feel that that's very clever and it adds because you can also have the game on its own. That's for me a complete value. Some of them, like Dixit, it's just deck of cards. It makes the game more replayable. I'm not sure it's a deck of cards with pretty pictures, so it's not a game expansion necessarily. It adds to the game. I would, I think those are lovely. I think those should not probably cost that much. Though I always believe in supporting the artist, of course, but when it's like mass produced like that, perhaps I see less value in that. Whereas I'll give you. I don't know if you know what is it called? The game. It's a game in which you are time traveling. Time Stories. Time Stories is the game, and the base game has one scenario, but the game has, once you play through that scenario, zero replayability because everything else they're mysteries, right? Once you've solved the mystery, you can't really replay it. So either you give the game to someone else. So the expansions are these card decks that contain new scenarios. But again, once you've played through it, then you have to, then it's done. It's not enjoyable to replay unless you leave some time go by, you sort of forget the scenario, and then you can play it again. So I feel that, to me, an expansion is great if it adds to the base game but still maintains replayability. Otherwise otherwise it's hard to justify. sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorites is Cities and Nights to put on top of Catan. Because it changes Catan. You still have the basis of Catan there, but man, the layers that are added with that is just one of my all-time favorite expansions. Just
Mm-hmm.
then you throw in Seafarers and break the island up. Forget it. I'll play that all weekend. Just that.
Yeah.
Seafarers, Seas and Nights, Catan all weekend.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it reminds me of the expansions for like Everdell. They have like 5 or 6 expansions. You can buy like the giant package with everything included,
Yeah.
but it's still like the base game works on its own, and then you can add different expansions to change the flavor. I feel that's good. I have to say I prefer to try a new game than to add an expansion to an existing game, but it's just because I am more interested in unless the expansion completely changed the gameplay, I'm more interested in seeing a different product.
Yeah.
How? Yeah.
I can see that. It's hard for me to decide which one I'd rather do. And you said that, I'm like, man, what would I rather do? Expand a game I already have and love and just try it a different way, or learn a new game. Like that's interesting. Now I'm like, man, deep thoughts, right?
Yeah,
Right?
I feel that it's difficult because then you also have different editions of games, right? And sometimes they change a lot in those editions, and so like that happens a lot with role playing games because they're manuals, so they get look at D&D, and sometimes the new editions are not compatible with the previous editions, and then you have scenario books that are compatible only with one edition but not the new one, and then sometimes they are, and then they make this giant realigning of everything so you can play with everything. And I feel that that's where they really lose me. I'm like, you know what, I don't need to have lore for decades. It's for somebody. Again, you can never make everybody happy, right? But so when it comes to role-playing games, I am not a big fan of expansions, new editions, and all of that. I prefer to try a different role-playing game, especially because role-playing games, like a lot of they can be frameworks that you can apply to different genres, but I tend to prefer games that are focused, role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games that are focused on one topic and have mechanics that are thematic for that topic. That's really when they hit my sweet spot.
I mean, everybody's got to have a sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
I like the games that, I love those games that are crunchy in an hour,
Yes, I agree with that. That's a good balance. Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, Camilla, I really want to thank you for being on the show today. It's been great having you. If anybody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, currently I'm trying out Blue Sky, and it's my name, Camilla Zamboni. On Discord, it's also Camilla Zamboni, like all one, like name and last name as a handle. I do have a presence on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn, of course, it's more professional. I'll say where I share the most is probably Blue Sky or Instagram. And then instead, if you want more like to have a chat, then Discord would be the better space. Or you can always email me, but I have a backlog of email that is significant, so that could be really, really slow. I also wanted to thank you. This was very lovely. I really want to play with you now.
Are you on Board Game Arena?
I am not. This is so interesting. I play a lot of tabletop role-playing games online because to me they really translate really well online because it's your theater of the mind, you're imagining and all of that, and the support that there is for maps and all is great. For board games, I have the hardest time getting used to Board Game Arena. I really enjoy playing board games in person.
There are some on there that I love. Colt Express. I just told you how much I love Colt Express.
Yeah,
I cannot play that on Board Game Arena. There's something about the way the game, it just doesn't feel the same, and I can't follow the game, which is funny because all it is like trying to pay attention to what somebody else is playing. But like and so I don't play it on there. But I don't really like Catan on there because I feel like it just takes forever because people they just take forever. But then like a game like Alhambra, you can just crank through that and I'll just keep playing Alhambra.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, that's one, Board Game Arena. I won't say love hate. I love it, but there's just games I won't play on there. Like, no thanks.
Yep.
So we'll find some time to play together.
Okay.
Maybe you'll be in St. Louis for some reason.
Maybe.
And as usual, if you want to reach out to me, it's facebook.com/eatlunchandboardgame. Website's eatlunchandboardgame.com. And you can always email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges. When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.